the group that filmed it announced it as being a major victory for the other animals that the RSPCA have been forced to drop them.
A lot of the national organisations do this, and they've got there's a weird mix going on where on one hand these organisations will promote veganism and they'll have literature promoting veganism, videos promoting veganism, all sorts of stuff promoting veganism, but they'll also engage in these short-term welfarist campaigns as well. And I think that's very much to do with fundraising. Because I think there's a difficulty, I think, within what you might call the animal advocacy movement in general. There's a difficulty, I think, where people fail to make distinctions between different types of campaigns. And they think, if it's for the animals, that's great, and I'll support it and I'll send my money. And people don't think any deeper than that in terms of analysing the actual effect of the different campaigns that are going on and how they're not all the same. And it's not enough to just think this is all for the animals so that it's all okay. You know, some things are more important than other things. Some things are more effective than other things, and some things do deal with the root of the problem far better than other things do. And we need to be able to make those distinctions. We need to be able to put our resources into that which is the most effective and the most far-reaching in terms of creating change. And obviously, you know, I would say that's vegan outreach.
Yeah, well, I mean, one point to try and kind of bring a couple of strands together with what's going on in Palestine is that, and using the kind of British example, because the Irish Parliament has been a bit different, but it kind of like really casts a long shadow over the idea that you can get anywhere with political campaigning, because you've got overwhelming kind of public support for something. It's the same as going back to the 70s, Ronnie, when there was something like 98% of people voting or stating in polls that they were opposed to hair coursing. No, it was lower, wasn't it, with fox hunting, but there was always huge amounts. And yet the representatives of those people could just go, no.
You know, the number of huge protests there been in London. I remember there was one against the Britain's involvement in the Iraq War, where there were, it's estimated as many as 2 million people took part in that protest, but it made no difference whatsoever, because you've got a government they're wedded to a certain ideology, their minds are already made up, and it doesn't.
That was a Labour government, wasn't it? I mean, look at Starmer.
It's Labour government, yeah, in name, yes, but a right-wing government still, nevertheless, under Tony Blair. And Starmer is Tony Blair too, isn't he? He's Tory light, isn't he? You might say. So it doesn't matter, you see, and I think this is the problem, and this is why, you know, we need a much more fundamental change. That basically what's happening with all these protests that are going on, and people are just banging their heads against a brick wall. And what we have to do is think about, you know, how can we actually dismantle that brick wall? And it's kind of very similar to the situation with pressure campaigns in terms of gaining protection for other animals, where people are, you know, trying to exert pressure either directly on the government or on companies that are likely to be supported by the government if it felt that they needed government support. And, you know, historically we've seen how that's happened within the movement. In, you know, like a big example was the Shut campaign, you know, the campaign to close the Huntingdon Life Science Animal Research Laboratory. Because the campaign looked like it was going to be successful, the government stepped in and saved the laboratory from closing and you know, put in various measures that ended up with quite a few people serving long sentences of imprisonment, you know, people that were involved in the campaign. This is what's happened in the past. And so this is, you know, unless we change things at a more fundamental level, that's going to continue to happen. And the way, once again, we change things at a more fundamental level is through vegan outreach. So when people say to me, you know, what is my response to, you know, the war that's going on in Palestine? What's my response to the war that's going on in Ukraine? I say my response to that is to do vegan outreach, because that's the fundamental solution to everything. That is, that is what will bring about peace. That's what will bring about world peace.
And my concern with that would be, until vegan outreach reaches a point where the people teaching it understand what veganism is, that won't have any effect, because they'll just stop them from eating animals in Ukraine or Israel or whatever. They won't stop them killing one another because they don't see these as related issues. This is a serious problem. One of the things that I was going to bring up tonight is, I know there's a lot of animals only vegans out there. And what I mean when I say that, because it sounds so weird to me to say animals only vegans, knowing that I am an animal. But I mean non-human animals only vegans. If you don't care about what's happening to women and children, if you don't care about genocide, you don't care about those things, there are millions and millions of non-human animals that have been affected in these conflicts, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, whether it's what's happening in Palestine. We're not just talking about the free living beings, we're talking about companion animals, animals that are still used as pack horses, all sorts of things. So if you don't want to care about the human related issues because that's what your belief is, that's absolutely fine, but you should still care about these other issues that are going on, even using your animals only approach. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree in the sense that the end really to all of these things is veganism, but it's veganism in its true ethos. And I don't think most people understand what that means. To a lot of people, veganism is not eating or wearing non-human animals. And so outreach in that regard wouldn't stop these conflicts, because people wouldn't even put them in the same bracket as one another. It's a problem. And I've seen so many vegans that I would expect better from, more or less saying those things.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think outreach has got to go hand in hand with what I call inreach, which is educating people who consider themselves vegan about what veganism really means. We have to do the two. We have to educate non-vegans, and we have to educate people who consider themselves to be vegan as well. That's very, very important. And I mean, that's absolutely true about war. I mean, it could be argued that the main victims of any war between humans aren't humans, but are other animals.
No, and I mean, the other thing that I meant to mention when we was going back to the death penalty, is even these people in the worst states, they've still got some kind of recourse, in the sense that, and I mean, talking about Palestine, that's really, really limited. But at least they've got people like us talking about it, or the journalists. They've got the ability to write a message somewhere, or what have the non-human animals got? They can't write a letter. They can't speak to their MP. They can't do anything. They've got absolutely no means of getting justice ever. I mean, the numbers of free living beings that are killed, even in forest fires, isn't reported, let alone in war. They just don't matter. Nobody cares how many birds died. Nobody cares how many fish were polluted. Nobody cares how many horses were blown to bits. They don't even tell you the correct numbers for humans. They don't even factor them in. So yeah, like, the numbers of non-human animals that are affected in these things will always surpass the humans by a considerable number, and they don't even get considered.
Yeah, what about the environmental cost? I mean, how damage into the environment is what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Palestine has been? I mean, they're shipping these missiles around from all over the world to them and everything, and then they actually let them off, and then kind of devastating the part of the planet. And I mean, it's one of the most populated areas in the entire world. So, but I mean, the amount of kind of collateral damage, even to the environment and to other animals, which never seems to get talked about, will be absolutely huge. And if vegans don't care about that, then what can you say?
I think it's that they kind of don't think about it, they don't consider it, because their view of what veganism is very often so very limited, and so part of the kind of the education within veganism, the inreach, is to educate them about that, is to say, well, look, veganism is far more than what you think it is, and this is the reason why it's far more than what you think it is.